In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo conducted the Stanford Prison Experiment, aiming to explore the psychological effects of perceived power. Participants, college students, were randomly assigned roles as guards or prisoners in a mock prison setting. What began as a seemingly harmless experiment turned into a disturbing display of human behavior under authority. Within days, the guards began exhibiting dehumanizing behaviors towards the prisoners, utilizing psychological manipulation and physical intimidation. The prisoners, stripped of their identities, became submissive, some even showing signs of severe emotional distress. The experiment was intended to last 2 weeks, but it was terminated after just 6 days due to the alarming psychological changes observed. This powerful study revealed how situational forces and social roles can influence behavior to an extreme degree. Zimbardo himself became involved in the study, embodying the role of the prison superintendent, which raised ethical concerns about his dual role. The Stanford Prison Experiment remains a critical reference point in discussions about ethics in psychology, the nature of authority, and the capacity for ordinary individuals to commit acts of cruelty under certain conditions. In the early 1950s, the U.S. military conducted a covert operation known as Operation Sea Spray. This unsettling biological warfare test took place in San Francisco, where the intent was to assess the vulnerability of urban populations to biological agents. The operation involved the release of a harmless bacteria, Serratia marcescens, from a Navy ship, which was dispersed into the atmosphere to study how it spread and affected the local population. The bacteria were believed to be harmless, yet some people later reported health issues, including pneumonia, leading to serious concerns about the ethical implications of such tests. The operation was shrouded in secrecy, with the public unaware of the true nature of the government's activities. Critics argue that Operation Sea Spray exemplified a broader pattern of unethical experimentation on civilians, raising questions about consent and the government's accountability. The fallout from this operation contributed to growing public distrust in the military and government, highlighting the need for stringent ethical standards in human experimentation. Ultimately, Operation Sea Spray remains a dark chapter in U.S. history, reflecting the lengths to which authorities would go during the Cold War era. In the 1960s, the Holmesburg prison in Philadelphia became the site of one of the most controversial and unethical medical experiments in American history. Funded by the University of Pennsylvania, dermatology professor Dr. Albert Kligman conducted tests on inmates, exposing them to various chemical compounds without their informed consent. The primary goal was to investigate the effects of these substances on skin conditions, but the research extended to exploring the potential of these compounds for broader medical applications. Inmates, many of whom had limited education and were desperate for money, were lured into participating with promises of financial compensation or reduced sentences. The experiments included the application of powerful drugs and the use of toxic agents, resulting in painful rashes, blistering skin, and long-term health repercussions. The ethical implications were profound, highlighting the exploitation of vulnerable populations in medical research. The Holmesburg experiments raised critical questions about consent, ethics, and the responsibilities of researchers, serving as a grim reminder of the potential for abuse in the name of scientific advancement. Unit 731 was a covert Japanese military unit during World War II, notorious for conducting horrific human experiments. Established in the 1930s, its primary objective was to develop biological weapons. Prisoners, including Chinese civilians and captured soldiers, were subjected to inhumane conditions. They faced vivisections, forced exposure to diseases, and lethal tests on biological agents. The unit's leaders believed their research would provide critical advantages in warfare. After the war, many members were never prosecuted, as they exchanged their findings with the U.S. government in return for immunity. The dark legacy of Unit 731 serves as a chilling reminder of the depths of human cruelty. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, conducted from 1932 to 1972, stands as one of the most infamous examples of unethical medical experimentation in American history. Initiated by the U.S. Public Health Service, it aimed to observe the natural progression of untreated syphilis in African American men in Alabama. Initially involving 600 participants, 399 of whom were infected with syphilis. The men were misled and told they were receiving free health care, In reality, they received no effective treatment, even after penicillin became widely available in the 1940s, which was known to cure syphilis. The study continued despite the ethical breaches, leading to severe health consequences, including disability and death among participants. The men were never informed of their disease or its implications, highlighting a profound violation of trust and respect for human life. This study not only inflicted harm on individuals, but also eroded trust in medical institutions within the African American community. The Tuskegee syphilis study was finally exposed in 1972, leading to changes in ethical standards for conducting research, including informed consent and oversight. Its legacy serves as a stark reminder of the importance of ethics in medicine. The Nazi regime's medical experiments during World War II stand as one of history's most harrowing examples of unethical human experimentation. Under the guise of medical research, thousands of individuals, primarily Holocaust victims, were subjected to inhumane procedures. These experiments often lacked consent, violating the most fundamental ethical principles. Researchers conducted gruesome tests, including exposure to extreme temperatures, infectious diseases, and mutilation, with the claim of advancing medical science. The ramifications of these atrocities prompted the post-war Nuremberg trials, which established the Nuremberg Code, emphasizing voluntary consent and the necessity of ethical standards in research. The chilling realization that this experimentation was driven by a pseudoscientific ideology raises critical questions about morality in medicine. Today, the legacy of these experiments influences modern ethical guidelines, reminding us of the importance of protecting human rights in research. As we reflect on this dark chapter, it is vital to ensure that history does not repeat itself, advocating for ethical responsibility in all scientific endeavors. The lessons learned from these events continue to shape the dialogue around medical ethics and human dignity. In the early 1950s, the CIA initiated MKultra, a covert program aimed at exploring mind control techniques. This initiative arose during the Cold War, fueled by fears of Soviet brainwashing methods. Aimed at developing strategies for interrogation and psychological manipulation, MKultra operated under a veil of secrecy, often disregarding ethical boundaries. Researchers experimented with drugs, including LSD and other substances, seeking to unlock the potential of the human mind. They conducted experiments on unwitting subjects, including hospital patients and even prisoners, often without consent. The program's primary goal was to understand how to manipulate behavior and extract information, leading to a range of disturbing practices. Documents later revealed horrific methods, including sensory deprivation, hypnosis, and extreme psychological stress. As public awareness grew, MKultra faced backlash, leading to congressional hearings in the 1970s that exposed its unethical practices. Ultimately, the program was dismantled, but its legacy remains a cautionary tale about the abuse of power and the ethical limits of scientific research, prompting ongoing discussions about personal autonomy and government oversight. The Willowbrook Study, conducted from 1956 to 1970, is a notorious example of unethical medical research. It took place at the Willowbrook State School in New York, where mentally disabled children were deliberately infected with hepatitis to study the disease's progression. The researchers justified their actions by claiming that the children would contract the virus anyway, but this rationale failed to consider informed consent or the well-being of the patients. The study raised significant ethical concerns about exploiting vulnerable populations. Ultimately, it served as a catalyst for changes in research ethics, leading to stricter regulations and the establishment of institutional review boards to protect human subjects in research.